Earlier, we talked about 49ers losing Deebo Samuel a couple of weeks with a calf injury. So now how do they compensate for the loss of their top receiver? And I mean, make no mistake, through two games, Deebo Samuel was the team's top receiver, 13 catches, 164 yards. That ranks 10th in the NFL through two games. Now, obviously, Brandon Ayuk, there are some plays there to be made for him, especially against this Rams defense. And 49ers are not in great shape offensively with no McCaffrey, no Deebo Samuel, but they're catching the Rams probably at a good time. The Rams are a team that everybody kind of thought would be an NFC West contender. They're 0-2 right now and in serious danger of going 0-3 and perhaps digging themselves too much of a hole to climb out of to get a wild card spot. I know there's a lot of games to be played, but still, you start off 0-3. I mean, these are kind of desperate times for the Rams, and obviously, no Aaron Donald. That's felt significantly. Maybe not only the best player on the Rams, but one of the handful of absolute best players in the NFL, even at the time that he retired. The Rams, defensively, they're short on cornerbacks. Offensively, they're short on wide receivers and offensive linemen, losing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua as far as long, in addition to the three starting offensive linemen they don't have. So Kyler Murray really was able to exploit the Rams defense in this last game. Arizona 41-10 over the Rams. Kyler Murray 17 of 21, 266 yards, and achieved the highest possible passer rating of 158.3. So what do the 49ers have to do? Without Samuel, the two guys who were behind Deebo as far as production in the passing game in the first two games were George Kittle and Juwan Jennings. Kittle, 11 catches, 116 yards and a touchdown. Juwan Jennings, 7 catches, 101 yards. And then the team's fourth leading receiver through those games, Brandon Ayuk, 6 catches, 71 yards. The Rams will be keying on him, no question about it, when he lines up on the outside. But it's some of the other guys that they need to get going. Chris Conley comes to mind, 1 catch for 4 yards in the first two games, but also Jacob Cowing hasn't even played. Well, let's go through the playing time for these guys to kind of give you an indication of where the 49ers rank these guys on their depth chart. In the first two games, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk were basically played the same number of snaps. Samuel played a little bit more, 10 snaps more in the first game, but Ayuk played 1 snap more than Deebo Samuel in the second game. And then behind them, Juwan Jennings played 35 snaps in game 1, 38 snaps in game 2. Chris Conley saw a lot more action in the game against the Jets, 29 snaps compared to 9 snaps against the Vikings. And then Ronnie Bell, 13 snaps against the Jets, 6 snaps against the Vikings. And then Jacob Cowing has yet to get on the field on offense. With his muffed punt, it'll be interesting to see just how much the 49ers, how much leeway they give him as far as on punt returns. They do have Trent Taylor on the roster, on the practice squad. They can elevate him for a game if they don't feel comfortable with Cowing. But this could be a game where Cowing gets out there a little bit. He just has to get more familiar with the system. Brock Purdy through two games might surprise some people, but he leads the NFL in passing yards. He has 550 yards passing in the two games, and he's also completed 72.3% of his passes. So, his passer rating isn't the gaudy 113 that it was last year, but it's still respectable, 96.3. And I mean, the thing that's probably stood out more than anything around the NFL in the first 2 weeks is that the passing games around the league seem to just be off. I don't recall ever, when training camp starts, it's always the thought that, the defense is ahead of the offense. And usually it sort of balances out. And by the time the games begin, that kind of swings and the offense always has the advantage. But it seems like this year, more than any other, the defenses have been ahead of the offenses around the league. But, where the 49ers have struggled is on third downs. Got to get more efficient there. Their running game has been good with Jordan Mason. He's the second leading rusher in the NFL, 247 yards rushing and two touchdowns in the two games. So 49ers have to get more out of the passing game. The Cardinals had a lot of success with Marvin Harrison Jr. 4 catches, 130 yards, and two touchdowns. I don't know that the 49ers have that big play capability anywhere on their offense, like Marvin Harrison, even as a rookie, brings the Cardinals, but there will be plays to be made against the Rams. And even without McCaffrey, even without Deebo Samuel, the 49ers should have some opportunities to make some plays. 49ers do have one roster spot available. We'll see what they do with that. They did have 6 wide receivers active for the first 2 games of the season, which is a little unique. They usually have 6 wide receivers on their active roster, and then they have 5 active for games. But I think with Jacob Cowing, a guy who didn't play any wide receiver on offense, he's the guy who's been returning punts. We'll see if that continues. And also Chris Conley, who I mentioned had 38 snaps in the first 2 games for the 49ers on offense. He's also one of the team's core special teams players. So that's how the 49ers can justify having 6 wide receivers active on games. But they won't have the same 6 active for this game because of Deebo Samuel's injury. So what could they do? They could promote or elevate one player from the practice squad. The candidates, like I mentioned, Trent Taylor, they use him also on punt returns. And it might be a little too early for Terrace Mitchell. They signed him after the final cuts. They brought him to the practice squad. He played his first couple seasons with the Carolina Panthers, never really made much of an impact there, although he's a highly talented guy. 49ers have him in the building. Might be too early as far as him knowing the system, learning what he needs to do, and getting him out there. So we'll see what the 49ers do at wide receiver. We'll also see what they do at running back, because I think it was pretty obvious from the game on Sunday that Isaac Guerendo got in for one play that didn't go well, stopped for no gain. One of the things that is very interesting about Jordan Mason, and Kyle Shanahan talked about this, was that Mason, these guys, young guys, come to the 49ers with a certain way of doing things, and the 49ers teach them a different way. So a lot of the times these young running backs are just going off instincts, and they're being decisive, and they're going, wherever they go, they make a decision and they go. Sometimes it's the wrong decision. So what the 49ers like about Mason is that they taught him how they wanted it to be done, and it didn't slow him down. He took to the coaching, adapted, and now he's hitting the holes and hitting the holes hard. With Guerendo, it's pretty clear he doesn't have the right instincts right now to hit the holes where they're supposed to go. So he's got to turn that around quickly, or he runs the risk of dropping down the depth chart. Patrick Taylor Jr. has been the number 3 running back. The 49ers also have Keyshawn Vaughn on the practice squad. And of course, there are some guys out there the 49ers have history with that they could bring in to be the backup. But right now, that part of the equation remains kind of in question. Who is the backup behind Jordan Mason, especially now that Deebo Samuel isn't available? So the loss of Deebo Samuel not only hurts the 49ers in the passing game, but it also hurts them as far as from the backup running back standpoint. Samuel, of course, had 8 carries in that first game. So there are 3 guys out there that have histories with the 49ers that they could look to. Matt Breida is one, Jerick McKinnon is another, and Salvin Ahmed, who spent some time in training camp with the 49ers a couple of years ago, is the other. So those are some of the issues that are plaguing the 49ers that they have to have answered going into this game against the Rams. Really a big game for both of these teams. Week 3 in the season. I know it's a 17-game season, but big game for the Rams. They can ill afford to fall to 0-3 on the season. And of course, for the 49ers, the last thing they want to do is drop to 1-2. Okay. So 49ers are off on Tuesday. They return to practice on Wednesday and they have their normal practice week before traveling to LA on Saturday. So my week is going to be a little bit different. Um, this is the final parents' weekend for my eldest daughter on the East Coast. So I figure one time in 4 years I have to go to Parents Weekend. So I'm going to be flying to the East Coast on Thursday. I'll be checking in from afar, keeping tabs on what's going on in 49er land. And then later in the week, I'll be able to post some stuff on YouTube as well from afar. And then I got an early morning flight out of Boston on Sunday morning in order to be there at SoFi Stadium with all those 49er fans that'll be filling the seats, I'm sure. And so you'll see me throughout the week. Might be in a different location tomorrow. I'll be in Santa Clara, but later in the week, maybe I'll be checking in from my hotel room on the East Coast. So until then, thanks so much for tuning in and please subscribe. Let's get those subs up, comment, like, all that good stuff. And I really do appreciate you checking me out here on YouTube.